Hey, what's up everybody? Bdf 44 coming at you with another video. Did my laundry this morning, feel pretty good. And now I just wanted to salvage my day, try to get some steps in and maybe make some content. It feels much cooler today than it did these last couple of days, man. I thought it was gonna be much hotter now that I'm stepping out. But it you know, feels good. Feels good. I'm gonna try my very best to provide you guys a therapy session here. I don't really know what to say other than what's already been said. A lot of times I have an idea about what's gonna come out of my mouth, but by the time the video ends, it's probably something different. You know how that goes if you watch this enough times. But you know, I guess the concept of winning and what it looks like when you take on a win is on my mind, although we've talked about this probably very recently in a certain context, but it's still the same concept, if that makes any sense. When I brought up the idea of what it looks like when you're losing but you're doing things the right way, or maybe it looks like the enemy is winning, clearly he's doing the wrong thing, fighting for the wrong team, he's bound to lose, and not getting so caught up in what it looks like in the moment when it looks like you may be losing. Or maybe you're getting cocky thinking you've won the game, but you know damn well you're not doing things the right way, cheating or what have you. You're gonna lose in the end in that scenario. So, you know, that's the kind of thing that was coming to mind this morning. You'll get to a point in life where you're looking at certain things in your life and maybe you feel like you ain't got a chance of winning in life, or maybe you feel like you're in a space where it looks like you've lost, or what it is that you think is meant for you ain't coming, or maybe you're churning away at something but you're not seeing progress, and maybe you even see what you think is regression as you're continuing to churn away. Maybe you're losing your desire to keep at the grind that you're on, or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of different things that that one can psych themselves into believing when it comes to that type of situation. But what I can tell you for certain is you got to keep going. Because if you're doing things for the right reasons, doing things the right way, that supernatural factor needs to be worked in to say that there's a God up there who's rooting for you to win, who's, if you're on his side, you're going to win. And if you're doing things the right way, it doesn't matter what it looks like at a given point, you're still going to win in the game. You know, it's a sports scenario that you bring up when you talk about these type of things, but you're in a basketball game and you're maybe down by 10, but there's a lot of time left on the clock, and you know you're better than the other team, and maybe they just went on a run, or maybe you did some things in the game that you were trying to get some of your teammates involved. You passed the rock and you missed some shots. You know, these type of things could lead to you not being in a space from which it looks like you're going to win, but if there's a lot of time left on the clock, or even a little time left on the clock, you still got an opportunity. And sometimes those investments in your teammates, and they miss the shot, while they miss the shot and it may hurt you in the short term, in the long term, throughout the course of the game, or even if you're looking at your season, you investing in your teammates and being unselfish with your teammates will make it so that they go a little harder for you. And on the back end with that effort, they end up doing things that maybe they wouldn't have done had they not seen that trust that you applied to them. And maybe furthermore, the guilt that comes with letting you down by missing the shot. Getting others involved could make you look like you're losing sometimes. But if you're doing things the right way, that investment will ultimately lead to a victory, ultimately lead to multiple victories, even if you take the loss in that game. And so these are the type of things that we just want to kind of work into the concept of life. It's like, you know, sometimes you try to do things for the right reasons and they don't work out. Maybe, you know, as people often say, some of the best intentions end with the worst consequences. But there's a supernatural factor that isn't worked into the equation when we consider these things, and that is the Lord knows your heart, and the Lord wants to see you succeed. So that for which you've done unjust, will be rewarded in kind. Even if in your good intentions you end up doing things that shouldn't have been done, the world will look at that as a loss, and rightfully so. But the Lord will see your heart. He'll know what your intentions was, and will continue to try to bless you because of it. And so that's what I believe. I was thinking about that this morning, because I was saying to myself, you know, in certain situations that I'm looking at, it's like, man, if I didn't have a relationship with God, I feel like I'm losing in life right now. If I didn't have a relationship with God, I would really be looking at certain things the wrong way. It's that I'm starting to establish that relationship, which hasn't always been as strong as I'm trying to make it right now, that made me look at things a certain way and kind of turn my focus toward what would solidify a loss. And that's what growing up, and then furthermore trying to have a relationship with God, is going to help you not do. Is that when the score looks however the score looks, without that relationship and with that immaturity, I would often start doing things that made sure that I was losing. I would choose to do things that solidify a loss, because it helped me feel like I could at least control that. I'm not going to be caught off guard by whatever comes. I'm not going to be sitting in this limbo, whether it could or could not, and being weak to the desire to stay in that space for the anxiety that may come with it, or just the sheer notion that it could not work out, and having that be something I'm not comfortable with being caught off guard by. You solidify your loss. But that's not what you want to do in life, because the idea is not to lose on your terms, but to win on God's terms, if you believe in Him. And that's really what I've come to understand, that I made mistakes in regards to. And so as I grow mature, grow more strong in that relationship with God, I ask the Lord to give me the strength to sit in that limbo space where things are uncertain, and lean into the things that will promote success and winning in my life, rather than saying, oh, screw it, ripping up all the papers, throwing them in the air, and then proceed to do things the wrong way on purpose, or proceeding to do the wrong things that only bring me short-term satisfaction but long-term turmoil. And so we need to not lock in our losses with our attitude. We need to not lock in our losses with our ideas that things cannot work out, and when they don't, your effort would have not been worth it, which is something I struggled with in the past. And to continue to remind ourselves that the past is not the future, which is where I currently struggle, as I continue to have these conversations with my therapist about this type of thing. Not locking in losses that way, thinking that your last experience is going to be what to expect, and then kind of coercing yourself away from its possibilities from there. That's where I really struggle. As I say to you, that I understand that it's more the same of what it is that we're talking about, to say that you don't want to live in that limbo space where things could go right, could go wrong. For me, that's a real negative space for me. That negative uncertainty kind of limbo space. As I assess myself, I think where I find myself most vulnerable to making poor decisions, and I really don't know what's going to happen. When it looks like it's not quite going to work out, but it hasn't failed yet, and maybe it could work out, but it ain't manifesting the right way, and it's starting to lean in the wrong direction. When I'm in that space, I think I often find myself looking up and realizing those is when I started making decisions that solidify me doing things the wrong way, or locking in my losses, so to speak. And so I said all this to say to you guys that, you know, as we continue to grow, I'm 40 years old, I'm going to be 41 in 2 months. And there may be people on here who are younger than me who may think that the idea of what it means to be 40 years old is to have a lot of these things already under control or already understood. But that's not how the course of life and experiences bring you. You can find yourself in a lot of different mindsets throughout the course of your experiences. You can find yourself feeling really mature and really strong, and then some trauma that can come into your life, or a mistake that can come into your life and change the way that you handle situations that otherwise you may have handled very well in the past. There's a lot of different things that can fluctuate up or down, but what cannot, if you want to manage your life, is your intention to doing things that lean into the possibility of winning and continuing to work on garnering the strength to make good choices in uncertain situations, which is a weakness for me, but maybe that's not a weakness of yours. But to try to lean into what's wise and what is most logically going to make sense for you, even when your emotions are caught up in it. Because I know that's a weakness for a lot of people. When their emotions are awry, or when their nerves is bad, when they've been ticked off, or when they're in a space of disappointment, they tend to lean into the same type of negativity that I often lean into when things are in limbo and don't look like they're going to work out. Maybe I too struggle with that, you know, but we got to find ways to always lean into our winning, our most winning-like behaviors in order to not regret, or in order to not have regrettable consequences locked into our lives. You may still do things the wrong way and stumble into some success. You may do things the right way and maybe have to take on being down or a loss or two. But that's when the privilege of a relationship with God starts to rear its pretty head, so to speak. That's when you know that your favor kicks in and God can say, hey, I know what you meant to do here. I know what you meant to do. It may not have worked out, but I was right there in your heart when you'd established your good intentions. And though your execution may have been poor, I'm attached to your intentions, not necessarily how things worked out, because I saw what happened well before you started this process, and I'm the orchestrator of what happens long after you've gone through this experience. So that part isn't as important to God. And that's what I'm starting to really have explained to me, more or less, as I meditate. It's, for the world, your execution is more important than your intentions. But for the Most High, your intentions are more important than the execution. Because that's what is judged. That's what's his space from which to most prioritize. All the happenings and the happenstances, when you have the all-seeing eye and the fullness of a 360 degrees of understanding, and you're able to behold the simultaneous infinite, more or less, at once, if that makes any sense. When you have that as your scope, random person making random mistake while having good intentions doesn't find itself being something that needs to be zeroed in on. Now, human beings with a limited scope, all of us who are affected by consequences of poor execution, and then furthermore faced with the unknown of what transpires from events, most definitely look at the execution and then project to the best of our ability what is good, what is bad, what's a win, what's a loss, how much damage something will take, how much it will be required of them to endure it or recover, or all of these different things that ultimately have to do with us not knowing everything, but seeing evidence of a certain thing. It makes us have a certain scope that allows for us to be most frustrated with poor execution, whether the intention is good or not. Not God. And so that's what I want to share with all of you guys, man. It may look like you're losing, but that's only because we're looking at it from a space of uncertainty and potential confusion. God does not have that problem. And if you're leaning on an all-seeing eye, he will allow you to understand the most important thing to him is not how things are done, but what your intentions were when you tried. And that you continue to see it through, or did you quit? Those are the type of things that God is most interested in. Let the world be worried about how things look and how things transpire. The Lord sees the deterioration and the buildup of all things. And he inspired everyone to build whatever is possible. So that part is not necessary as much as just what was you trying to do? What was your intentions? What was the spirit behind what you did? And a lot of times people do things that execute well, but they had selfish intentions. They had bad intentions. They were hoping that what they were doing right will tumble forward so that they can have self-gain or whatever the case. He's not going to look at you like you had great intentions just because the execution turned out right. He knew what you were thinking. He knew what was in your heart. And that's exactly what he wants you to focus on. Being better so long as you live. Just because it looks like you lost, and still climb on the clock. And for those of us who know the Lord in a way that he gives us information or gives us communication or aligns us with visions that we have seen transpire into reality, for those of us who had that special gift or whatever, that special connection, this is for you. God is not going to tell you that something's meant for you on a Tuesday, and then on Friday, give you confirmation that it's something that you never should have been chasing. There's some confusion in there in what you're receiving. And that's not abnormal, because the enemy is always trying to incorporate himself on the same frequency that your mind is on. And the Lord is speaking to you likely in ways that your mind can comprehend. So the same thing that's giving you the energy from the Lord is the same thing that's giving you from the energy from the enemy. And the world is always trying to compound suggestion from the enemy to cloud your vision, distort the Lord's voice in your conscience, and ultimately make you think that something's coming from him that's not meant from him. Especially if you have discovered that the Lord is in your heart. It is important for a lot of those people to meditate deeper than what is expected of most of us, so that they can train their minds to understand the difference and to, within their best discernment, undistort, if that's a word, the cloud of the enemy's voice or the sound of the enemy's voice as you're trying to receive something from the Lord. It's very important, especially some of us who've lived in sin, who've dabbled in the wrong things, who were listening to the enemy for a while, who allowed ourselves to get so dark that we couldn't hear God for a while. We go through this. We go through this because we know that we have a communication capability with the Most High, but we've also put ourselves in a position to be so clouded by our own darkness at a time in our lives, till now that the energy that we receive from the Lord can be distorted with the energy that doesn't come from him. Mixed in with our own thoughts, our own doubt, our own way of perceiving things, what we think is most wise versus what it is that he's telling us. People who have that gift, and I'm speaking to you as somebody who believes he has it, you got to really keep your house clean, man, because the enemy will, if you allow him to be the voice that you listen to for any point in time in your life, when it's time later on, when you've rid yourself of those intentions and you're trying to hear the Lord, you're going to end up hearing both voices. This is coming from absolute and utter experience. This is something that I've learned in my own walk of life. Nothing I've heard anything about, nothing I've read anything about. This is something that I've dealt with, I'm dealing with. That's to say, and I've said this on this camera many times, and sometimes I don't know if it's the Lord bringing me certain things or not. You know, one day it feels like he's confirming something. The next day he's telling me, nah. It's because at one point in my life, I was so far into darkness and sin that I couldn't hear the Lord no more. I remember certain times in my life when I felt that way. I was like, yo, I cannot hear God, man. Couldn't hear him. He was completely muffled out of my entire mind, just like a regular human being who doesn't have this gift. I could not hear nothing. And I was driven by my own desires, driven by my own fears, driven by my own sin. And I knew God. I knew him. I had already been through a phase in my life where I could hear him. I'd already been through a phase in my life where I was able to see confirmations in the thing that he spoke to me. So I was one of those people that really knew better. But still, in the presence of my own desires of life, I was just like, man, my heart is maybe broken, whatever happened in that point in my life. And I'm interested in doing things the devil's way, for the devil's reasons, because he's cool. And it's much more fun on this side. That's all I was thinking. Just like a lot of people think. And then everything that transpired after that was not to my betterment. I got slapped around by life like I was supposed to for acting that way, for having those intentions. I went back and forth with it. Said, nah, I don't want to do this anymore. Apologized, and then went back to it. I went through that whole phase until the Lord really made it clear to me, like, yo, you are going to either obey me or I'm going to remove you from your life. You ain't going to have much time to be playing around like this because you have real purpose. Now, I couldn't see what the purpose was going to be. I didn't see who I was trying to become now. But at that time, it was like, yo, I can keep on doing what I'm doing. I'm young. God don't care about this. He ain't showing me that he cares. Like, I don't feel like I have no purpose. I'm not, there's no purpose to my life. I can just do whatever I want. Feed my own demons because I don't see no reason not to. Even though God is telling me there's a reason, I ain't listening. And it got to a point where I couldn't hear him no more. And I needed to. I would come to prayer. I would say something, you know, God, I want you to watch over this person. And I hear nothing. Nothing.
So I have a question.
Couldn't hear a clear thought or nothing. Just silence in my head. This pertains to that same consciousness that I had already been shown was there.
For how long?
And so what I'm telling you is, if you have that type of relationship with God, if you have that connection with God, and you start playing around with the devil, that voice is going to silence in your head. And when you need to turn to him, the only thing you're going to be able to hear is the devil's voice. And you can come back around. But up until this point, it has not been as clear to hear only his voice ever again. Now I'm kind of, you know, I'm establishing a relationship with God. He's spoken to me. He's shown me things. But also I find myself hearing things that I don't think really go along with what it is he's already said. And this is what came to my head. Like, you have done this. This is why that part of your life, that part of your spirit is damaged. You did damage. I ain't heard the word irreplicable, so I don't know that it can't be restored, but I have done damage. It's not spiritually harmless. The devil is a deteriorating, erasing entity. He is looking to deteriorate your connection with God. And if you do that dance with him, you help him along in that process. And those of us who know that we're going to need God later need not toy with that. We need not let the world coerce us into thinking that it's harmless to toy with that. Because that's its functionality. I mean, there's a million ways to do it. So don't be confused. You may not make the mistakes I've made, but you can make your own and have that same type of thing happen to your consciousness or to your conscience. And so that's what I'm saying to all of y'all, man. Those of us who are spiritually sensitive in this way, those of us who have a connection to the living God in this way, we need not, in our young days, toy around with energy that's going to remove the Lord from our mind. Because if you do, when you come back around, the devil gonna be right there trying to get in, just like the Lord is gonna be attempting to get into your head. And you got to figure out who's who. You got to figure out who you're listening to. And it's hard, man. That's the problem. It's hard to discern what's what sometimes. So it takes more meditation. It takes more concentration. It takes you not moving right away sometimes. When a voice say, hey, move, it may not be in your best interest. That may not be coming from God. And that's a hard pill to swallow, man. But it's a real one. And so that's what I want to share with people, man. That's not for everybody. Not everybody even gonna understand what the hell I'm talking about, and that's okay, man. That's okay, but there are gonna be enough people who do to make this, I think, something that God wanted me to say. At the end of the day, it's about not toying around in dirt, not allowing hurt to coerce you into spaces of demonic practices. That's what it comes down to. Because a lot of times it ain't going to be your happy self. It's going to be the self that was let down by somebody, or the self that was told no about something that you really wanted really bad and was working towards. Somebody who had things deteriorate after working so hard toward them. Have it all wiped away. This is just moments of despair that inspire that. And it's important that in those moments, and every moment leading up to those moments, you have that relationship intact, so that the Lord can have you leaning into winning practices that don't have anything to do with deteriorating those connections that He uses to reach you. So I want people to give that some thought, give that some prayer. And I think that there's some correlation between having a voice that others listen to, or being a leader of some sort, or being a mentor of some sort. If you're responsible for what others choose, you're more than likely going to have this be a possibility of that being a power in your life. And that's what I want to say. For those who are looking for hints on whether or not this applies to them, if you're responsible for other people, or if you have a big voice that other people are going to follow for any reason, if you influence people, there's a chance that the Lord gave you this ability. There's a chance that He gave you that ability. And the bigger the voice, the likely more intentional He is on using you, connecting with you to further the message that He wants to put in your vessel to share with others. It's just what I think. And so, yeah, man, I think at the end of the day, though, if your intentions are righteous, I think you will find that He's pleased with the intentions regardless. You may have to deal with the cleanup of making mistakes. You may have to deal with the human fallout, people not being pleased with you and your reputation taking a dive, or whatever the case may be. But if your intentions were pure and of the Holy Spirit, I think He will consider that immensely more than humanity is able to. So yeah, man, that's what's on my heart to share with everybody, man. I'm not sure where I'm going today, to be honest with you. I'm just walking around. Maybe go to Hollywood, maybe not go that far, maybe go to the bank, maybe. Not really sure where I'm headed. I just wanted to give y'all that content. And you know, just remember, the game is not over just because it looks like you're losing. There's time on the clock, man. There's time on the clock. There are circumstances that may not necessarily have formed yet, that'll show you what your true win looks like. And a lot of times when we're making mistakes in life, it's hard to see when the consequences of those mistakes start to form. It's hard to see things breaking the right way as we foresee what's ahead. A lot of times when you're in competition, you expect your opponent's going to play perfect when you're making mistakes. But sometimes your opponent is going to make mistakes too that are going to bring the edge back to you, bring the momentum rather back to you. And those are the things that you may not be able to foresee when trying to determine how much effort should go into what it is you're doing. how much focus, how intentional you should be on making less mistakes and doing things the right way. You think that your opponent is going to play perfect ball. Your opponent may be about to make a mistake that gets you right back in the game. And the better you're playing, the more focused you are, will determine how much of a gap you'll be able to close in, or how much of a lead you'll be able to take from you. How much a lead you will take in the game rather than just being down. Now you were down by 10, he made a couple mistakes, now you're up by 10. But if your effort was bad, your score still, you're still down by 10. Don't let your effort wane just because the score isn't in your favor. Because your effort will determine how much you're able to capitalize on the mistakes that may be made in your favor. Bdf 44, I thank you all for watching. I'm out.